What is up? This is Nuri. This is my second video of kind of a farewell tour of Turtle WoW. This will be my last Turtle WoW video. Um, in this one, I will be making my way to my logout spot, which I've already picked. And I'll be talking about a lot of things. Mainly, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of Turtle WoW. Uh, and a lot of my personal experience in this game and why it was special, for this is for myself to be able to come back and look at this, for the guild maybe. But for anybody that didn't get to play this game, hopefully, my hope is in the future that this game will be infamous, kind of like Nostarius was. And maybe this will kind of explain what the hype was about. And yeah, so we're starting here at the squad guild base. This is where I wanted to start. Because above everything else in this game, squad, uh, I think getting to be on the ground floor with this guild and with now a gaming community is probably the greatest thing to come from this experience for me. Squad, just as a WoW guild in Turtle WoW, went through so many rebuilds and so many times that any other guild that I was in the past would have quit. Probably wisely so, honestly. But through pure grit and tenacity and maybe a little bit of stubbornness and just a desire to keep this community going, we survived. And this guild base is a testament to that. We have outlived many other guilds, many other players on this server, and we are still here at the very end, hours before the shutdown. So very proud of this guild base, very proud of Squad and their TWOW career here. Very proud of the history. Very honored to be a part of the people who uh, did their part keeping this guild going, which was many. And very proud to be an officer and HR and just a raider and player and part of the community. So, yep, so we might as well get going. So my plan is I'll port from the top of the tower here. Go up here one last time. I got a list of things to talk about here. I'm going to wait until we port. I will say one thing I do regret is that we never utilized this guild base like at all, except for just as a hub to come grab ports or to fly to AQ or to Dire Mall. I mean, this is a great little RP spot. It was honestly kind of wasted on us. Like we never had, well, kinda, but we never had like an epic officer meeting here, sitting around the table. But we did have a few events here. We did take a final screenshot. All right, so next stop. It's Karazhan. I figured that would be a good place to go next. From a RP side of things, I mean, I'm very happy that I got to get Atiesh. That portal went absolutely nowhere. Gonna have to go somewhere else. Anyway, rip. But yeah, having Atiesh. Oh, there you are. In the ground. Look at that. Let's hope the Dark Reaver's not up. Doesn't instantly kill me. But having the 3.5 gear that looks like, obviously taken from Medivh's appearance. Oh, of course. You know, I wouldn't have it any other way. Here I am about to like talk about how this is my tower and I'm the Guardian of Tears Fall, and this Joker's up. It's a world boss, by the way. Anyway, you know what? I'm glad that happened. That's par for the course. But yeah, getting to live the mage, medieval kind of RP fantasy in this game was awesome. And porting to Karazhan, and they put this world boss right on the the spot where you poured in the Atiosh port. It's just peak trolling. That's awesome. All right, so here we go. We're gonna make the trek. I've already got the plan laid out. I may have to pull up the map every once in a while. Oh, please don't kill me. All right, so first on the list, I was talking about earlier. I think that this game will go down with a lot of notoriety. Um, I imagine that Blizzard has Classic Plus on the horizon, much like they did when they came out with a Classic after Nostarius got shut down. And Nostarius will always have the same kind of history and same kind of um, just kind of a legend of being shut down, and people talk about how great it was and the experience of it. And I think the same thing will happen in Turtle Well. I think it will also happen to like the nth degree, because this was a Classic Plus server. This was developed a lot, and I think people will talk about how great it was for decades. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk about the cons of this game because Turtle Wow was not perfect. So we're gonna kind of start with the bad and end with a lot of the good. But I've got a list of things that were not perfect about this game, and let's get one of the big ones out of the way right off the bat. So one of the biggest cons for me, and a lot of people agree with this, was Class Changes 2. So Class Changes 2 comes after, obviously, Class Changes 1. And I was around for Class Changes 1. I think I started playing a few months before that actually happened. Um, Class Changes 1 was good. Class Changes 1 added a few little things here and there, not major overhauls to any sort of talent trees or spells or anything like that. But Class Changes 1 gave, like, for Mage, the Arcane Tree added a couple things. It was never going to compete with Fire or Frost, but you gave a buff to your party that, gave a lot of mana per 5, and just little niche things here and there. They gave taunts to some of the tank classes to make them more viable. So Paladin and Druid could be a good tanking class. You did need 16 warriors in next to be able to do 4 horsemen. So, it was good. Class Changes 1 added just some fun, but it didn't change anything about the best stuff from vanilla, the min-maxing, as far as, like Mage Fire was always going to be top DPS and next. Class Changes 2, as far as I know, was a brainchild of the developers, but also, a community of just players to come in and give their input and try to figure out some fun things to do. And they did an okay job on some classes. And again, these are just regular people. We had a friend of ours in guild who was a part of the warrior paladin brain trust to, I think it's a paladin, brain trust to kind of figure out a cool set of class changes. And this turned a lot of people off because it took away kind of from the vanilla vibe. You're no longer your figured out specs from 20 years ago don't really matter anymore. it was wildly different, and I honestly felt a lot like retail. You know, your class has changed to the point that all of this gear that you have farmed is now completely non-viable. You know, now you have to prioritize haste instead of crit, or you know, hit instead of whatever. And that's a big deal. I mean, you know, at least in retail, the class changes happen, and then you have the leveling process, and you know, the gear is kind of streamlined. You're cherry picking things for the new meta. Um, this, you know, you're it just didn't work very well. It left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. A lot of my paladin and warrior friends just stopped playing altogether. Some classes started out great, like mage. Mage, so the arcane, just to show you here real quick. Oh, what did I take damage from? Weird. Um, so the arcane tree, you know, got revamped, and at the beginning it was really, really cool. Um, the idea here was to make like a glass cannon spec. They took away all of our stam from the gear, just about, and they even made it so that arcane power would kill you if you got below 10% of your maximum mana. But you were going to be crazy DPS, always top DPS. So, you know, some of these started out great, but then for whatever reason got nerfed, and Mage kept all of the not being able to survive and raid attributes, and they gutted our DPS. You know, so that's just one example. Some classes made it out really great. Whoever did the rogue changes, if you played a rogue in like the last 5 months of this game, you were doing well. You were doing really well. Even with a slight nerf towards the last set of patch notes, still doing well. If I didn't have a rogue alt, I probably would have quit the game, honestly, and joined some of my friends who just weren't happy with the way their class was playing. So that was definitely the biggest downside of Turtle WoW, was just kind of how the class changes happen. And again, the people that were in charge of that are not 100 employees at a large corporation. These are just regular people. So it is what it is. It's a lot of doing your best. And I think that had Turtle WoW gotten to continue, it definitely, I think, would have gotten better and a little more streamlined, and people would have kind of learned trial and error, which has always been Turtle WoW's MO. So that is definitely one thing that's a con about Turtle WoW. The other con about Turtle WoW is the time sink in this game. And what I mean by that is that, so towards the end of Turtle WoW's existence, Squad pretty much had a raid sign up every single night. And these aren't like optional, like, hey, let's go back and do multicore for fun. This is like, you got to come back and do Molten Core because now there's some added content there that drops one little niche thing that you need to be able to parse if you're really serious about doing numbers in raid. So your average week was doing Molten Core, doing Blackling Weir, doing maybe AQ. You know, they hadn't gotten around to changing anything in that. But ZG for idols, Keratin to try to get the trinket that's never going to drop. You know, Nex, Kara 40, you know, ES Emerald Sanctum was one you didn't really have to go back for, but there's recipes in there. There's a legendary recipe for Scythe stuff that, you know, is something people still want. In Vanilla and Vanilla Classic, you had, you know, you still had to do the lower rage, but that was more to gear up people. And you could bring your alts to that and Um, it's just different here, and they were going to add, Grim Patrol, a tier 4 raid, on top of everything. It's just impossible to juggle. And as a dad guild, as players who are mostly around my age, that's just not viable anymore. Right now, we're currently playing Wrath on another server, and it's completely different. You have the one main raid or two main raids every week, and then that's it. You can raid log. Sorry, my cat is freaking out. Hold on. Merlin. Sorry, buddy. Get you some food. Shout out to my cat. He's meowing because he's used to being neglected while I'm sitting here and having to raid all the time. But yeah, I mean, it's just too much time. When I first started on Turtle, I told my wife I would raid like once a week. I didn't have a lot of big plans. I wouldn't take any leadership role. And then years later, that all that was a lie. But she's awesome and we're still married. So anyway, but yeah, I think I'm going to run for a while because I'm actually going pretty fast here. And there's a lot of stuff that I want to get off my chest. But yeah, it's just too much of a time sink in this. I didn't appreciate, all of a sudden there being a trinket that you need in Molten Core. There's a ring you need in Molten Core. That's not even, there wasn't a lot of experimentation with, stuff from the BWL raids. There were trinkets in there that probably would have become this, and you would have had to start farming. There's just too much, and I understand why they did what they did. It's to keep the lower raids relevant and a lot of new players coming to the server. I get it. But oh my god, this is too much time. Not to mention, your regular gold farming. There's no world buffs in Turtle WoW, which is a plus, but there's added consumes in the game, and you're spending upwards of like 800 gold a week to be able to raid if you're doing everything in the game. So the time sink was definitely one of the things that I could not. I just couldn't do. I was getting tired. If Turtle WoW wasn't going down, it just wasn't sustainable for me as a guy with 2 kids and a wife and basically 2 jobs. So yeah, so that's definitely a con. And then my third biggest con of this, and this is very related, is the Scythe of Elune. And I watched another video of somebody talking about this. So the Scythe of Elune is a legendary in this game, legendary trinket, which when they were first talking about it, nobody knew what that was going to be. You would think a scythe would be a weapon or something cool, some sort of cool model in the game. No, it was a trinket. It was a very overpowered trinket. It was, if you were serious about parsing, if you were good, you could still do without it. But it was required for casters, basically. And it never dropped. And I say never. It never dropped for people who had a lot of gear. If you were to walk around Stormwind, and again, there was another video that it's just like spot on everything that was frustrating me. If you walked around Stormwind or Orgrimmar, you would see a lot of people with the scythe, because it put 3 little balloons above your head that were supposed to be moons, but it made you look more like Pennywise from it. if you went and inspected these people, most of them had tier 2 or 3. They were not bissed out. It was, if you looked at people who had my gear set on, um, and it looks like the only thing they're waiting for is this trinket, they did not have it. A lot of my friends, who got this gear quicker than me, better than me, could never get this trinket to drop. A friend of ours in guild pretty much tried to get the trinket every single lockout that Kara 10 was out. Couldn't get it to drop. But lower geared people could get it to drop. And the theory is that Turtle WoW programmed it so that, some sort of armor value or armor skill level would increase the odds of this trinket dropping for you. And I mean, the evidence is everywhere. I don't know if it was intentional or an accident or whatever, but this was a major turnoff for several people. And I mean, it was, I just quit. I had a friend, Lieutenant Bay, who's extremely amazing at the game, our raid leader, who would even offer to, who would even offer to, we found a way to exploit the instance so that just he and I could do it together. 2-man, the boss that dropped it was the second boss of the raid, and I would have no competition if it would drop. Is mine. Never could get it to drop. Very frustrating. So, as we pass Oldemon here, those were the things I did not like about Turtle WoW. Just had to get that out of the way. It's not a perfect game. I mean, this was made, like the Tony Stark meme. This was made in a cave with scraps. I'm not saying this to say that I hated Turtle WoW, like not even close. But yeah. So those are the cons. Now pros. The pros of this game, as we enter Loch Madon, which I'm going to have to do some laps here because I'm getting close to my logout spot. So, pros of the game, and it's really hard to pick one that's the best, but I would say one of the biggest pros was the experience of the game. For anybody that played vanilla, or if you were a Burning Crusade baby, for many, many years ago, a lot of the classic experience is trying to go back and relive that feeling of exploration and community and the newness of this. I still remember creating my paladin for the first time in vanilla and walking around and just being like, oh, I wonder what's in this building. I wonder, who is this guy? Like, I bet they're important. Getting that first grayed out sword that was, looked like something Cloud would have wielded in Final Fantasy VII. If you weren't there back then, if you're not old enough to have experienced that, there's no gaming experience that comes close to that. And that is, the evidence to that is that World of Warcraft has survived all these years. A lot of people that play retail are just kind of addicted to that experience and just want to further that experience with their characters that they've made. Turtle WoW is the closest to that feeling, and honestly, closest is not even doing it justice. It did do that. Because in this game, they've added so much stuff around everywhere that it was like going back to 2005, 2006, 2004 if you're really OG, and being able to do that. There's just so many custom quests in this game, so many new things, so many things to click on, so many little Easter eggs, so many everything in this game that made it feel like it was new. And that will not be replicated, and I'll talk about that more at the end. So that's definitely one of the pros of this game. The other pro is the community of this game. Um, this game has been out for 8 years, and the community. I talked about this in the last video, but everybody knows each other here. There's so many people, so many names in this game, so many people that I may not know them in their real life personally, but I know them in this game extremely well. I know all their habits. I know all the bad things they did and the good things they did, and um, you have a lot of friends and you have a lot of enemies in this game. Uh, well, maybe not a lot of enemies, but this felt like a very organic environment, much like the vanilla experience was. You couldn't do something in this game and really get away with it, even if you changed your name. It would be found out very quickly. Uh, but the people in this game, the interactions, not perfect. They're obviously people that play this game that are hard to get along with. I might have been one of them. I don't know. But the community is just incredible. Um, and playing vanilla, you were kind of landlocked to some of these servers. You didn't really interact with a lot of people uh, really outside of maybe your region. There's a bird up there. Um, but definitely not outside of the language you spoke. This game had people from all over the world: Russia, China, UK, Australia, Philippines, everywhere. I've met so many people of different cultures and different countries in this game, and we all coexisted. We all had to work together. Um, Community of this game is second to none. I don't think that'll ever be replicated. The other thing about this game that I really, really liked is the gameplay. Um, and I'm going to combine this with the other thing that I liked about this game. And what I'm about to say may be controversial, especially to some of my friends in Squad, but I'm going to lump these together. So the gameplay and the developers / leadership of this game. So the developer of this game, and this is why Blizzard will never be able to replicate this. The developers of this game worked hard on all of these new zones, all of this content, all these raids, because they wanted something fun themselves to play. The leadership of this game, Torda, go ahead and get this out of the way. Torda is probably Shinna. Torda is probably working on their second yacht from money that people paid for stuff in the cash shop in this game. A large part of that money is probably for me. But honestly, I don't care. I don't care that Torda is probably a Russian criminal. More power to he, him, they, whatever, for keeping the lights on in this game and being able to play it as long as they did. A lot of the developers, the for-profit method, and let's not mince words here, donation, whatever, people made money, lots of money off this game. Somebody did. Honestly, I don't care. I think they deserve it. That may be a hot take. But, the developers and trickling down to the radio on this game, which, let's just turn that on for a second. Turn the volume up. Yeah, nobody's talking right now, but just keeping that alive, this game is amazing as far as the gameplay and the experience. Point in case, my guild right now is trying to find another server to play. And a lot of us are split between, like some of the, I'm not going to name drop any of the servers, but some of the Classic Plus experience, some of the no changes vanilla servers, the era servers. And everybody has a different cup of tea. We won't all be happy and migrate to anything else as a cohesive unit. Which really, to me, tells you that Turtle WoW was the perfect WoW experience. It catered to everybody, sweats, noobs, um, dads, you know, 22-year-olds without a job. Like, anybody could do what they wanted to in this game and found a place. And, I have a friend at work who played this game who all they did was just quest. They never did a raid, never even made it to 60. They're on slow and steady and almost had lore master, just because that's what they wanted to do in this game, and you totally could do it. It reminds me a lot of the Final Fantasy XIV experience in that in-game is not the only thing that's viable and for fun in this game. There's so much to do, so much fun stuff. It appealed to so many different people, and that's because of the leadership and everybody that worked on this game. And so the last thing, as I make my way down here to my logout spot, the last thing about this game to me personally, and honestly, it's kind of hard not to get a little emotional about this and, can cringe or whatever at what I'm about to say, but um, honestly, the greatest thing about this game is the people. And I don't mean that necessarily just from the community aspect. I mean, for me personally, the interactions in this game, the friends I've made in this game, um, are unlike any other iteration of an online community that I've been in. A lot of people who play this game are, middle-age-ish. Uh, a lot of people who play this game are now people with families, people, who are embedded in their careers. So a lot of very uh, similar types of people, I'll say. Um, from a personal standpoint, when I started playing this game 5 years ago, and especially when I joined Squad almost 4 years ago and started raiding, um, it came to me in a time of my life where I was, I had started a family, was trying to figure out how to be a dad. Um, I was in a very weird spot as far as my career. Um, I'm a professional classical musician, which, if anybody's listening to this and that's something that you think you want to do, please don't. Because it's very stressful, being in auditions, having to beat X amount of people just to be able to put food on the table for your family. Very, very, very stressful. Um, this guild, this game, this community got me through a lot of that. To be able to log onto this and talk to like-minded people and to have a true escapism that, could only be the only thing that I can think of that's even close to it is, 20 years ago. Walking into World of Warcraft for the first time, it's just an amazing experience. So I am forever grateful to this game for getting me through the time in my life that I was in. Um, I don't really don't know what more to say about that besides, um, yeah, it was amazing experience top to bottom. Turtle WoW will never be replicated unless it just for some reason comes out again and we're able to jump back in with our characters and play it. Blizzard will never be able to replicate this. Even if they copied this server one for one and put it on their retail live servers, it won't be the same. They won't be able to do a lot of the things. I mean, logistically, they couldn't even put guild bases in the game, just because of how many people would be a part of their Classic Plus and logging on. You can't give every streamer a guild base. You can't give every guild a guild base. I know they weren't able to do that in Turtle WoW, but That's just an example of one thing that was awesome about this game that never would work in Blizzard. The community will never be like it was in Blizzard. The feeling that I described of playing this game will never be a part of Blizzard. And while, somebody who works with music copyright a lot, I understand why they did what they did, sorta. And I don't blame them, for protecting their IP and stuff like that. But the reasons they gave, are bull. Like it's this was dismantling something that was way better than anything that they could put together, and they know it, and that's why they destroyed this game and put it into it. But on a positive note, I'll finally make my way over here. Uh, I don't know who said it, but don't be sad that it's over, but be glad that it happened. I am so glad. I got 5.5 good years of this game, almost 4 years of raiding with squad. That's basically like a high school career. Um, I'm so happy that I got to play this, got to be a part of it, and honored. And here it is. So this is the high elf, the old high elf starting zone. And I said in my last video, I won't make a showcase of zones or anything. I do have a lot of videos in my archives, archives in my on my PC. I'll still maybe put out some of the content that I recorded just for fun, but I won't be making any zone stuff. But the high elf starting zone above Eastern Plaguelands, so cool. But this was the old one. And right here, if I'm not mistaken, or at least around this spot, I can't remember that far along, but this was at least the old high elf starting zone. This is where Nuri logged into the game. And little did I know where this would take me. Um, wouldn't trade this experience for the world. So this is it. Thank you so much, Turtle Wow. Thank you so much to the people that played with me. Thank you so much to just everything. I'll probably be on tomorrow for the shutdown, for the end of the world. Watch the meteor come and destroy everything. Watching Nestorius is always kind of sad to watch that moment. Watching the, before Realm Reborn, Final Fantasy 14, watching that server go down, I always felt sad for those people, but it's also kind of a unique experience. And I will log on to my rogue and experience that tomorrow. But yeah, at this point, I'm just stalling. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Nuri, thank you. I enjoyed getting to play you. I will enjoy getting to live on as Nuri on another server we're playing right now and getting to raid with squad. But nothing but peace and love, guys. Peace, love, and Soul Train. Be good or be good at it.